The scent of grilled cheese, garlic butter, and fresh tomato soup drifted through the narrow alley just off the business district's busiest street. Emma Carter wiped the sweat off her brow with the edge of her apron and pushed her trolley stall into position. The wooden cart, though worn and chipped at the edges, gleamed with care. A little sign that read, "Mama's Kitchen, homemade meals with heart," dangled proudly on the front. She had $35 left to her name, and a mother waiting at home, her medication nearly finished. She forced a smile as she opened the lid of the soup pot, letting steam rise like a hopeful prayer. Every day felt like a battle, but she fought it with a spatula, a ladle, and a heart that refused to give up. The lunch rush began like a wave. Lawyers, interns, office workers, all scrambling to grab something quick. Emma moved with practiced grace, filling orders and exchanging small talk. She didn't need pity, just customers. But fate had other plans. A moment that changed everything. It happened in a blink. A boy on a skateboard, no older than 12, zipped by carelessly, clipped the edge of her cart, and before Emma could react, the trolley jerked sideways, rolled off the curb, and crashed into the front of a parked black Rolls-Royce Phantom. A sickening thud echoed across the street. Time froze. Gasps rang out from onlookers. Phones came out. Someone muttered, "Oh no, that's his car." Emma's stomach dropped. Her hands trembled. She rushed forward, inspecting the dented bumper, then turned to the car with wide, panicked eyes. The rear door opened. Out stepped a man in a charcoal gray suit, every line of it screaming money and power. He stood tall, commanding, his presence nearly silencing the street. Dark hair, stormy eyes, a chiseled jaw. He looked like he'd stepped off the cover of a Fortune magazine. People actually stepped back, as if not to breathe too close to him. Emma's mouth dried. She'd just damaged the car of a man who probably had lawyers on speed dial. "Sir, I am so sorry," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't mean, there was a kid, and the cart. Just please. I'll pay. I'll find a way." The man said nothing. He just looked at her, and then, his gaze softened. "Are you hurt?" he asked, voice deep and calm, like warm velvet. Emma blinked. "Double what?" "I asked if you are okay." She expected fury, threats, a lawsuit, but he was worried about her. She looked up, confused. "I'm fine. I mean, my cart. Your car. God, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean." "Take a breath," he said gently. "It's just a car." The crowd murmured in disbelief. Emma stepped back, tears pricking at her eyes, not from fear, but from the sheer whiplash of kindness she hadn't anticipated. "You're not going to call the police, sue you?" "No." His lips tilted slightly. "I've had worse things happen during board meetings." Some laughed nervously. She couldn't stop staring. This man, this millionaire, was helping her pick up her scattered soup containers off the sidewalk. "Here," he said, handing her a cracked lid. "By the way, what kind of soup is this? Smells amazing." Emma swallowed. "Tomato basil, my mom's recipe." He nodded. "She's got good taste." Their first real glimpse of each other, as he helped her prop the cart back up. Their hands brushed. A jolt ran through her, not the kind that made your heart race in panic, but the kind that stirred something deeper. A spark, recognition, humanity. He looked at her with curiosity now, his gaze lingering for just a second too long. "I'm Nate," he said. "Nathaniel Blake." Emma blinked. Blake Technologies, the name she'd seen on downtown skyscrapers and in business magazines. This was that Nate. She gave a small nervous nod. Emma Carter." "Nice to meet you, Emma Carter," he said warmly. She still couldn't believe this was happening. The man who could buy her whole block with one phone call was speaking to her like she mattered. A hook for fate. "Everything okay here?" A security guard approached, eyeing the car nervously. Nate gave a half smile. Just a lunch accident, nothing to worry about. Emma reached into her apron. I want to pay for the damage, even if it takes me 10 years. I don't want charity. He looked at her, something flickering behind his eyes. I don't want your money, he said. But how about this? Next time I'm in the area, you save me a bowl of that soup. She stared at him, stunned. Deal. She hesitated, then smiled, a little dazed. Deal. He gave her one last look, a look that lingered, and got back into his car. As the engine purred and the Phantom disappeared into traffic, Emma stood frozen, still holding the cracked lid in her hand, still feeling the echo of his eyes. Little did she know, this was just the beginning. The next morning, Emma Carter opened her phone, expecting the usual missed messages from her mom, a grocery store reminder, maybe a few orders from her online soup menu. Instead, she found her world flipped upside down. CEO comfort street vendor after accidental collision. True kindness still exists. Rolls-Royce crash, no problem. Nathaniel Blake wins hearts with humility. Who is the girl with the soup cart? Netizens want to know. Emma's face was everywhere. In screenshots, freeze frames, TikTok clips, and Twitter threads. Her eyes wide with panic, her hands trembling. And then him, Nate Blake, kneeling beside her, picking up her soup containers like an ordinary man. 7.3 million views, 400,000 likes, 25,000 comments. She nearly dropped her phone. Fear and fascination. At first her stomach turned. She didn't want fame. She wanted peace. Her store was her little piece of the world where she could survive, not go viral. She stared at her reflection in the toaster oven's chrome surface, brushing hair out of her face. What now? She whispered. Just then a notification buzzed, a message from her old friend Leah. Emma, I just saw you on Insta. Girl, what? That guy is hot, and you were trending on Twitter. Call me. Emma sighed, setting the phone aside. She didn't want the world's attention. She wanted to afford her mother's medicine. But that morning, everything changed. Unexpected visitors. The next day, a long line formed near her trolley store. Before she'd even set up, I'll take whatever soup that CEO guy had. One woman laughed. Is this where the car crash girl works? Another whispered to her friend, phone in hand. Emma smiled awkwardly, cheeks burning. It's tomato basil, she mumbled, ladling soup into paper cups. That's what he had. More people came, some out of curiosity, some out of sympathy. A few just wanted photos, but others, especially older women and working folks, looked her in the eye and said, you held your head high. That mattered. We need more girls like you. Keep going, sweetheart. And for the first time in a long time, Emma felt seen. Not for her poverty, not for her struggle, but for who she was. The return of the Phantom 3 days later, as the lunch crowd thinned, and the city heat softened into a warm breeze. She stood behind her cart sipping a lukewarm lemonade. Her shoulders ached, her heart was tired, and then like a dream, replaying in real time, the same Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled up beside her stall. Her heart stopped. The door opened. Nate Blake stepped out in a rolled-up white dress shirt, sleeves casually unbuttoned, no tie, no entourage. His eyes locked with hers, and for a second, the world hushed. You still serving soup? He asked, a small smile playing on his lips. Emma blinked. Why, you came back. You said you'd save me a bowl. She chuckled softly, unable to hide her surprise. You were serious. I rarely joke, he said, resting a hand on the stall counter. But I meant it. She served him a fresh bowl, this time creamy potato leek, with sourdough croutons. He took one bite, closed his eyes, and actually sighed. God, this is good, he said. You know you could open a real place someday. She leaned on the stall, and raised an eyebrow. You mean like a food cart? He laughed, eyes warm. Touche. They fell into easy conversation. Nate asked about her recipes, her mom, her long days. He wasn't prying, he was listening, and Emma, usually guarded, found herself opening up. How her mom used to own a small bakery before the stroke, how Emma dropped out of college to care for her, how every soup had a memory behind it. I like feeding people, she said quietly. It's the only thing that makes the world feel kind again. He nodded slowly. Then keep doing it. The world needs that more than another app. She looked at him, studying the lines of his face, noticing how his expression softened when he talked to her, how he lingered after each sentence. You're not what I expected, she admitted. He tilted his head. What did you expect? I don't know. She smiled faintly. Someone colder, louder, richer in a scary way. Nate laughed. A real one this time. Trust me, the money's loud. I'm not. Their eyes locked, and for a heartbeat, just one, there was silence. A different kind, not awkward, not forced, but full. A crack in the armor. Before leaving, Nate placed a small folded napkin beside her tip jar. Emma watched curiously as he walked back to the Rolls-Royce. Only when he disappeared into traffic did she open it. Inside, in neat handwriting, were 3 words: "Save me Thursday." Her fingers trembled, not because she was scared, but because, for the first time in a long time, she wasn't alone, and that scared her more than anything else. The Thursday Nate asked her to save came and went. Emma made extra soup, dressed in her best jeans and cleanest top. She even wore lipstick, a soft cherry tint her mom used to wear on weekends. But Nate never showed, and she hated herself for how long she waited. This starts because, what starts because, Ince waited, trying to forget the phantom for the next few days. Emma told herself she was being foolish. He was a billionaire. She was a girl with a soup cart. Maybe it had all been a kind moment in passing. Maybe he was just kind, or curious, or bored. Still, every time a black car slowed near her stall, her heart betrayed her. She tried to stay grounded, focused. Her mother's medicine had arrived, thanks to the sudden wave of business from the viral video. Emma had even managed to put down a small deposit for repairs on her cart. Good things were happening. She didn't need a fantasy. She needed reality. And then came the job, the unexpected invitation. A friend of her late father, Mr. Powell, ran a catering business, and called her out of the blue. "You still looking for evening work?" he asked. "I always am," she replied. He offered her a 2-night temp job serving hors d'oeuvres at a high-end charity fundraiser. Emma hesitated. "I don't know, Mr. Powell. I don't really fit in at places like that." He chuckled. "You'll be in the back, all black attire, invisible, just how the rich like it." She sighed. "Classy. Pays triple." She agreed. When worlds truly collide, the venue was something out of a dream. A massive rooftop garden, glass chandeliers swinging overhead, city lights twinkling behind elegant guests in tuxedos and glittering gowns. Jazz played softly in the background, and waiters moved like dancers through candlelight and perfume. Emma wore black slacks, a white blouse, and a trembling heart. She told herself she was just working, just serving. She didn't expect him to be there, but there he was, Nathaniel Blake, standing beside a marble bar, drink in hand, wearing a midnight blue suit that made him look like royalty. He smiled at someone's joke, but his eyes, they weren't in it. There was a hollowness behind the polish. Emma froze. The room tilted for a second, disoriented for a second. Emma whispered a fellow server, "You good?" She forced a nod, lowered her tray, and dipped into the crowd. The second spark. It was over an hour before she crossed paths with him again. She turned a corner, hands full of champagne flutes, and nearly walked straight into him. They both stopped. His eyes widened, and for the first time since she met him, he looked speechless. He blinked, his voice barely above the music. "You're here. I thought you didn't like soup anymore," she said, trying to smile. He shook his head. "I had to fly to DC unexpectedly."
I left the office thinking I'd see you before I left. She tried not to show how much that meant, how much she needed that answer. You didn't leave a note, she said. I didn't think you'd care. I did. Silence. Then you look different, he said. She glanced down at her plain outfit. This, she laughed. It's my 5-star look. He smiled. It suits you. 2 worlds, 1 rooftop. They slipped away to a quieter corner near a marble railing overlooking the skyline. Emma leaned against it, taking in the view. I didn't expect to see you again, she admitted. Nate looked out at the city. You're the first person in years who didn't ask for something after seeing my last name. Emma turned to him. And you're the first person in years who looked me in the eye and didn't see a charity case. He glanced at her, really looked at her, and for a long moment, neither of them said anything. The city lights blurred in the distance, casting gold over her face. Then quietly, I missed your soup, he said, breaking the silence. She smiled. I missed your ridiculously expensive car crashing into my car. They both laughed. It was soft, real. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a tiny napkin, folded. She recognized it. Her heart flipped. I was going to give this to you the next day, he said, handing it to her. Inside were words in his handwriting. If fate brings you here too, then maybe I wasn't wrong about you. Her breath caught. What are you doing, Nate? She asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. I don't know, he said, honestly, but whatever this is, it doesn't feel like a mistake. Interrupted by reality. Mr. Blake, a voice called from across the room. It was his assistant, sharp-eyed and frowning. Your father is waiting in the lounge. Nate's expression shifted instantly, cold, guarded. Emma saw it, the way his posture changed. The armor returned. He looked at her. I have to go. Of course, she said softly. But he paused. His eyes softened again, just for her. Don't disappear on me. I won't, she whispered, and then he was gone. But her heart was still standing there, on that rooftop, wondering what this pull between them really was, and if it was strong enough to survive what came next. The days that followed felt different. Emma still pushed her cart through the same cracked sidewalks, still served soup to tired workers and laughing children. But something about her heart had changed. She wasn't sure what she and Nate were yet, but she knew it wasn't nothing. A rainy day, and a familiar car. It rained the next Friday. Hard, the kind of rain that soaked you before you could open an umbrella, turning the street into a mirror of puddles and broken light. Emma had almost closed early. Customers weren't braving the storm. She was loading her containers back into the cart when she heard the soft purr of an engine pull up behind her. She didn't have to turn around to know who it was. A black umbrella opened above her. I thought rich people didn't like getting wet, she said with a teasing glance. I thought soup girls closed early when it rained, Nate replied, holding the umbrella over both of them. They looked at each other. No laughter this time, just eyes. I was about to head home, she said. Let me walk you. A walk through the storm. They walked in silence at first, their feet splashing through puddles, the city breathing around them. The umbrella wasn't big enough for two, so their shoulders brushed every few steps. Emma felt his warmth in the cold, the calm steadiness of his presence. You always this nice to girls who crash into your car? She asked softly. He chuckled. You're the first who did it with a soup cart. Emma smirked, but then turned serious. You didn't have to come back, Nate. I know. Then why did you? He was quiet. Then because I saw something in your eyes that day. Something I haven't seen in a long time. Inside her world, her apartment was small, worn, and warm. Yellowing wallpaper, a floral couch that had seen better days, but it smelled like cinnamon and rosemary. Emma helped her mom, Miss Carla, into the living room, introducing Nate with nervous hands. Miss Carla looked up with wise eyes and a slow smile. So this is the man with the expensive bumper, she teased. Nate laughed, guilty as charged. They had tea, cinnamon apple with clover honey. Carla talked about Emma's childhood, how she used to host tea parties with saltine crackers and flower petals. Nate listened, actually listened, his eyes soft and present. Later, when her mother went to rest, Emma walked Nate to the door. "You didn't have to come inside," she said. "I wanted to. I'm not your world, Nate. I'm not sure I belong in mine anymore." She looked at him, her breath catching slightly. "You're not what I expected," she whispered. He stepped closer. "What did you expect?" "I don't know. Someone colder, someone who wouldn't care." He leaned in, eyes searching hers. "I used to be that man," revealing the pain. They sat on her building's front steps, under the awning, the storm easing into drizzle. Nate stared out at the glistening street, then spoke. "My mother died when I was 11. Cancer. My father never stopped working. Not for her, not for me. When she passed, he just moved on. I don't remember him hugging me once after that." Emma's chest ached. "I started working for his company when I was 16, trying to earn his approval. I've made him billions, but still, I'm just a tool to him, a number," Emma whispered. "That's why your eyes look tired." He turned to her. "And yours look brave." She looked down. "My dad left when I was 8, said he was going out for milk. Never came back." Silence. "My mom gave up her bakery to raise me alone. Then came the stroke, the bills. I tried to juggle school and jobs, but I broke somewhere along the way. I never talk about it. People look at me like I'm fragile." Nate reached out slowly, his fingers brushing hers. "I don't." A touch that changed everything. Their hands stayed that way, fingers curled together on cold concrete steps. And for once, Emma didn't feel small beside him. He didn't feel above her. They were just two people, with old wounds and quiet hopes, breathing the same air. She looked at him, eyes full of something unspoken, a question, a need, a spark, and then slowly, gently, Nate leaned in. Emma didn't move away. Their lips met, soft at first, testing, learning, then deeper, slower, like they had all the time in the world. When they pulled apart, neither said a word. They didn't need to. After the storm, Nate stood to leave. "Can I see you again?" Emma smiled softly. "I think you already are." He lingered a second longer, then walked into the wet night, leaving behind the echo of something real. And for the first time in years, Emma didn't feel like life was just survival. She felt like she was living. Love doesn't always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it slips in quietly, between shared glances, late night walks, and unexpected laughter. That's how it came for Emma Carter, and that's how it began for Nathaniel Blake. The rhythm of something real. Nate started showing up more often. No press, no assistant, no driver, just him, rolling up his sleeves and blending into the world Emma knew.
Some days he helped push her trolley through the uneven sidewalks. Other days he stood in line like everyone else, ordering soup with a wink, pretending to be just another man hungry for lunch. But Emma knew he wasn't just coming for the food, he was coming for her, and she was starting to wait for him. Moments in between. They never called it dating. No grand declarations, no labels, just slow mornings and soft nights. Conversations that lingered past closing time. Jokes exchanged over warm bread, hands brushing while washing dishes in Emma's tiny kitchen. One night in particular, it was a Wednesday, quiet. The city had gone to sleep early, wrapped in the stillness of spring. Emma had just closed her stall and was counting her tips when Nate walked up, holding 2 cups of hot chocolate. "No soup tonight," he teased. "I'm off duty," she said with a smirk. "Good," he replied. "I wanted to steal you for an hour." They walked along the lakefront, lights glinting off the water like scattered stars. Nate took off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. It smelled like sandalwood and something uniquely him. "Tell me something you've never told anyone," she said suddenly. Nate was quiet for a long moment. "When I was 17, I applied for a job at a bookstore under a fake name. I just wanted to know what it felt like to be normal, to be hired for who I was, not what my last name meant. Emma blinked. Did they hire you? They did, he said with a soft smile. For 2 weeks I shelved romance novels and brewed stale coffee in the break room. It was the happiest I'd ever been. She laughed gently, the sound like a melody he never knew he needed. And you? He asked. Your turn. Emma looked out over the lake. I used to write songs, she whispered, silly ones, heartbreak, hope, little stories in rhyme. I stopped when I started working full-time. Felt like dreaming wasn't allowed anymore. Nate turned to her. Sing one to me someday. Her cheeks flushed. Maybe. They sat on a bench, the city behind them, silence between them, but not the empty kind, the peaceful kind. And then he said it, very softly. I think about you when I'm not around you. Emma's heart fluttered. Me too, she whispered. The gift that wasn't a gift. A few days later, her soup supplier showed up early. We got your invoice already paid, Miss Carter, the man said, tipping his cap. Very generous of your friend. Emma's stomach sank. She didn't need to ask who. That evening, when Nate showed up at her stall, she didn't smile like usual. She crossed her arms. Why did you pay my invoice? He blinked. I just wanted to help. I didn't ask for help. I wasn't trying to pity you. Emma, I admire you. I need to earn what I build. Nate, I need it to be mine. The hurt in her voice was sharper than he expected. He took a breath. You're right. I'm sorry. I know you mean well, she said, softer now. But I've spent my whole life trying to prove I'm not fragile. You're not, he said firmly. You're the strongest person I've ever met. Her eyes welled up with tears, not because of anger, but because of how much she wanted to trust him, to let someone else carry the weight, even for a moment. But she was scared that loving him meant losing herself. A kiss that felt like a promise. That night, after he walked her home, she stood by her door, with her hand on the knob. Rain drizzled from the sky again, soft and cold. She turned. I'm trying, she said, voice trembling, to believe that you could be real. I'm trying too, he whispered. And then she stepped forward, not because she was sure, but because her heart wanted to be. She kissed him, not like the first time, tentative and wondering. This kiss was full, brave, needing. His hands framed her face as if she was something precious. Her fingers curled in his shirt as if she might fall without him. And for a few moments, the world disappeared. It was just them, poor girl, rich man, no difference, just hearts, colliding gently, under the rain, falling, fully. That night, Emma wrote a new song. It didn't rhyme perfectly, but it felt true. I wasn't looking for a savior. I was building something with trembling hands. But then you came, quiet and kind, and held the pieces I dropped, without asking me to say thank you. Love, no matter how pure, doesn't exist in a vacuum. Emma and Nate had built a fragile bubble, made of soup and soft confessions, shared secrets and quiet kisses. But the world had been watching, and it was ready to strike. A father's warning. It began with a phone call. Nate didn't want to answer. He was in his penthouse office, sipping the last of his coffee, when the name Victor Blake flashed across the screen. His father. He stared at the name. The blood in his veins turned colder. Finally, he answered. You've been seen, came the sharp voice on the other end. Nate didn't speak. Victor continued. Photos, videos, you walking beside a soup cart girl, you kissing her on a public bench like some reckless teenager. Nate's jaw clenched. Her name is Emma, and I'm not hiding her. Victor's scoff echoed. You've built an empire, Nathaniel. You're about to close $1 billion acquisition.
and you want to throw it away for some street vendor. She's not some street vendor, Nate growled. She's a woman with more integrity than half your boardroom. Then choose, Victor snapped. Your company, or your distraction. The line went dead. The media storm. Within 48 hours, Emma's name was no longer just whispered in alleyways or trending under cute headlines. Now it was on business blogs, gossip pages, and news feeds. Who is Emma Carter, the mystery woman beside Nate Blake? Soup cart Cinderella, or strategic sweetheart? Sources say Blake family disapproves of the pairing. Emma saw it all. Her store went quiet. The curious had turned cautious. Her loyal customers whispered with sympathy. Cameras began lurking near her apartment. And worst of all, her mother saw the news. Baby, Carla said softly, holding her hand. If he's making your life harder, you don't have to prove anything to anyone, not even love. Emma smiled through her tears. I know, Mama, but I wasn't trying to prove love. I just found it. And now I'm scared I'll lose it. The confrontation. That evening, Emma waited for Nate by the lakefront, the same bench where they had first kissed in the rain. He came, but the light in his eyes was dimmer. She held out her phone silently, showing him one of the articles. I didn't ask for this, she said, but I'm paying the price. I never wanted you to be dragged into my world, he murmured. You didn't drag me, Nate. I walked into it, with you. He looked away, shame building in his chest. My father's threatening everything I've built. She stood up, heart pounding. And what are you doing, Nate? Are you protecting what you've built, or the person you love? The silence was deafening. I thought you were different, she whispered, but maybe I was wrong. His voice cracked. Emma, I can't be your secret. Tikilzufit, I can't be a temporary escape from your reality. I never meant for you to be, he said. You became my reality. Then why do I feel so replaceable right now? Nate reached for her hand. She pulled away, and that hurt him more than her words. The letter that broke him. The next morning, Nate stood outside her apartment. No answer, just a folded letter taped to the door, his name in her handwriting. He opened it slowly. Nate, you gave me pieces of a life I never thought I'd taste. Laughter, hope, love. But I need to protect the parts of me I fought so hard to build. I know you're trying, but right now, your world and mine, they're speaking different languages, and I'm tired of translating. If we're meant to find each other again, we will, but not like this. Emma, he stood frozen. The wind tugged at the paper, but nothing tugged harder than the silence she left behind, falling apart. The days that followed were empty. Nate sat in meetings and forgot what people were saying. He walked into his office and forgot why he came. He stared at his reflection and hated who stared back. Emma was gone, and with her, the only part of his life that had ever felt honest. And Emma poured soup with a quiet ache. Her cart still stood, her mother still smiled, but her heart, it had gone still. Because even though she walked away, she still woke up every morning, hoping to see him in the crowd, even when she knew she wouldn't. Sometimes, walking away isn't weakness, it's courage. And that's what Emma did. Not because she stopped loving Nate, but because she finally started loving herself enough to protect her peace. 6 weeks later, the city moved on, as it always did. Trends faded, headlines changed, and the media stopped caring about the soup cart girl. But Emma Carter wasn't standing still. A cafe of her own, the small corner cafe, used to be a dusty, forgotten storefront tucked between a laundromat and a hardware store. The landlord had nearly given up on finding a tenant, but then Emma came, with a heart full of memories and pockets nearly empty. She painted the walls herself, hung curtains she found at a thrift shop, and scrubbed every tile until it gleamed with hope. She named it Hearts and Herbs, a tribute to her mother's recipes and her own journey. The chalkboard menu was simple: soup, fresh bread, herbal tea, a few cozy booths. shelves of second-hand books, a window seat with a cushion she stitched by hand, and people came, not because she was famous, not because of Nate, but because her food still tasted like love, because her smile still felt like home. Stronger than before, Emma stood behind the counter one sunny morning, wiping glasses, humming a tune she hadn't sung in years. Her mother, now doing better on a new treatment, sat at a corner table, reading a magazine. The bell above the door jingled. A young girl with a backpack walked in shyly. "Is this the place where the soup girl used to work?" she whispered. Emma smiled. "I still do," she replied. The girl grinned. "My mom said, you're the reason she started cooking again." Emma blinked back tears, because this was the dream she didn't even know she had. Nate's world without her. Meanwhile, miles away, in a high-rise tower of glass and tension, Nate Blake sat in silence during yet another board meeting. He'd signed the deal his father demanded, acquired the new tech firm, gained millions, but lost himself. He no longer cared about the numbers, the forecasts, the applause. He couldn't even taste his coffee anymore, because everything tasted like a memory of her. Every empty chair reminded him of the girl who once made soup on the sidewalk and made him believe in things he didn't dare to dream of. Hope, softness, love. The search begins. He tried to find her quietly, drove past the street where her cart used to sit. It was gone. Tried calling Mr. Powell. He didn't answer. Even returned to her apartment building. But all that was left was silence and shadows. It was as if she had been a beautiful dream, and he'd woken up too late. Until one afternoon, the smell of tomato basil. Nate was walking through the older part of town, avoiding yet another call from his father, when something stopped him in his tracks. It wasn't a sound, it wasn't sign, it was a smell. Tomato basil. Her recipe. He followed it like a man, starved, heart pounding harder with every step. And there it was, a small cafe with ivy along the windows, and a handwritten chalkboard sign outside. Hearts and Herbs, home of the soup cart girl. He froze, stared. The bell rang as he stepped in, and then, her Emma was behind the counter, her back turned, humming softly, while stirring a pot. She hadn't changed, still wearing her apron, still glowing from within, but there was something new in her posture, a quiet confidence, a peace. He stood there for a long moment, before whispering, "Tomato basil, I knew it was you." Emma turned, her heart stumbled, caught off guard by the sight of him standing in her space. She met his eyes, that same mix of steel and softness, but this time, she wasn't unsure, she was whole. "Nate," she said quietly. He stepped forward, the words catching in his throat. "I looked for you," he said, "everywhere." "I wasn't hiding," she said. "I was healing." He nodded. "I'm proud of you." Tears welled in her eyes. "I thought of you every day," he admitted. "But I didn't want to come back and ruin what you were building." "You didn't ruin anything," she said. "We just needed space, time." "And now?" he asked, almost afraid to hope. She walked around the counter slowly, paused, then reached for his hand. "Now, I think I'm ready to fall all over again." Two souls, rebuilt. They sat in the window seat, sipped tea, laughed like no time had passed, talked like time had made them better. There were no grand declarations, no staged apologies, just real people, with real scars, and real love, reunited not through fate alone, but because they both chose to find each other again. The air inside Hearts and Herbs was warm with cinnamon, soup, and something sweeter, hope. Emma and Nate sat together by the window, hands intertwined on the table between them, hearts beating like they'd waited a lifetime for this moment. And maybe, in some ways they had. The conversation that mattered most. "I meant what I said," Nate whispered, eyes never leaving hers. "I thought about you every single day." Emma nodded gently. "So did I. But I wasn't sure if we could ever exist without breaking again." He swallowed. "I'm not here to ask for the past. I'm here because I want to build something new, with you." She looked at him, really looked at him, his tired but honest eyes. his hands that had held power, yet trembled when he touched her. "And what about your world?" she asked. "Your father, the business?" Nate leaned back, took a breath. "I've already made my choice. A stand against power." 2 days earlier, in a glass tower overlooking the city, Nate had stood before the Blake Enterprises board, with steady hands and fire in his chest. His father's voice rang out like thunder. "You'll throw away your legacy for a woman with no pedigree, no assets. What does she offer you?" Nate looked him in the eye and answered, clear and unwavering, "Everything you couldn't." Then he placed a folder on the table. "I'm stepping back from day-to-day operation. The deal is signed. I've done my part. Now, it's time I live my life, my way." The silence in the boardroom was heavy, but Nate didn't flinch. He walked out with nothing but a small smile and peace. Back to the present. "I'm done being the man my father made," he told Emma. "I want to be the man you saw in me." Her lips trembled. Tears blurred her vision, but they were the kind that came not from pain, but from finally being understood. "Nate, I don't need you to save me," she whispered. "I know," he said. "I'm not here to save you, Emma. I'm here to stay." The proposal, unscripted and beautiful. He reached into his coat pocket, not for a velvet box, but for something folded and simple. A cloth napkin, the same kind from the store where she once served him soup for the first time. Inside, written in his familiar handwriting, "Let's build the life that fits us. No spotlights, no headlines, just real things, and maybe forever." Emma let out a shaky laugh. "Are you proposing with a napkin?" Nate grinned. "You gave me soup. I thought this was fair trade." Her laugh melted into a smile that lit up her entire face. "Say it out loud," she whispered. He took her hand, eyes full of raw tenderness. "Emma Carter, will you give me the honor of walking beside you, for good, as your partner, your biggest fan, your forever?" Tears spilled from her eyes. She didn't hesitate. "Yes," she said, voice breaking with joy. "Yes, 1,000 times, yes." A life on their terms. The news never picked up the story of the billionaire, who left boardrooms for a soup girl, and that was fine. They didn't want to be famous anymore. They wanted slow mornings, cafe playlists, rainy day kisses, and late night talks under fairy lights, on the back patio of Hearts and Herbs. They expanded the cafe together, started a weekly pay-what-you-can dinner for the neighborhood. Emma's soups became legend. Nate's heart became whole, and neither of them ever again had to walk through life pretending to be someone they weren't. Final scene. On a quiet evening, years later, a little girl with curly hair and her father stood outside Hearts and Herbs. "Daddy, who's the lady in that picture on the wall?" she asked, pointing to an old framed photo. The man knelt beside her and smiled. "That's your mom, the bravest woman I've ever met." Inside, Emma stirred a pot of soup with one hand and waved with the other, her eyes shining. And Nate Blake, no longer a CEO, no longer a man hiding behind power, looked at her the way a man looks at his home, because he'd found it, not in a mansion, not in a headline, but in a food cart girl, who had the courage to walk away, so they could find their way back.